Alright, what's going on, people? This is Faded Zephyr. I'm coming at you with another top 10 list here that I had the idea for. I got the idea with the new Last of Us show, but it gave me the idea for this video game adaptations. Now, I know historically they haven't been the greatest, but in recent years, there's been small uptick. There's still a bunch of fucking bad ones that come out. Actually, there's definitely a lot of fucking bad ones that still come out. There's shit like fucking Arcane is technically a League fucking adaptation. You got The Last of Us, which is pretty good so far. Detective Pikachu is technically a Pokemon adaptation, which that was pretty good for what it was. The new Mario movie looks alright. So I think there is an uptick. I think we are starting to get video game movie adaptations that actually are worth a shit for once. It was a really dark time in the span of the late 90s and the 2000s, really up until like 2016, honestly. I think we're finally crawling our way out of the muck. And I think if we're gonna go through this kind of little renaissance movement, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it, of video game movie adaptations that are actually worth the shit, I have 10 games here that would make really good adaptations. And if they were done, put in the right hands, right directors, writers, all that stuff, and they were put in the hands of people who actually cared about the games, because that seems to be a fucking problem now too. These people that do make these adaptations, they either they'll tell the actors not to fucking watch footage of the games, or they'll like disdain the games, or like they think it's like beneath them, like, oh, video games, that's just kid shit. Who cares? We're making movies and TV. Who cares about that video game shit? Even though that's what we're adapting, who cares? That's kid shit. We're gonna do our own thing with it. Yeah, that is a significant problem. But if they aren't put into the hands of people who will do that, I think that these video game franchises or whatever would make really good movies / TV shows. So here's my top 10 list, and these are in order of like what personally I think would be the best ideas, or what personally I would be most excited for. This is a completely subjective list. It's gonna be different from anyone else's who makes this kind of list. It's my list, completely subjective. If you disagree, feel free to disagree in the comments. I welcome any disagreement, any constructive criticism, whatever. It's all engagement to me. I don't care. But without further ado, here's the list of my top 10 most anticipated video game movie adaptations if they were made. Number 10, Left 4 Dead. Now, this is a little bit of an oddball choice, but look, I think that they're the characters in Left 4 Dead, and there's enough set pieces there, and there's enough memorable things. You can make a good movie out of it. I wouldn't do a TV series or anything, but I think a good movie, I mean, it inspired a shit ton of memes. The characters in it are well known, they're well loved, whether the original or the sequel. You could do either, in my opinion. I mean, I would personally go for the original cast first if you were gonna do it. If you do a sequel movie, then maybe you can do the sequel cast. They're both good. I like them both. You gotta give props to the original, because they are the OGs. I think there's a lot of good dialogue. You could literally lift a lot of dialogue directly from the games, and it's still funny. And it's still clever and witty. It reminds me a lot of the good Marvel stuff, the stuff that's not ridiculous and too over the top. It reminds me a lot of the stuff that was like in the early Marvel movies, the quippy kind of back and forth, the conversations that the main cast of Left 4 Dead have. I think you have that, you have the set pieces, you have to hold out against hordes and stuff. It'd definitely be a pretty action-packed movie. You could probably add a few things, maybe add a few characters to make it so it's not just an hour and a half of just shooting zombies and stuff. You got a bunch of cool stuff to see in live action. I feel like the special infected would be cool to see. There's a lot of fan service you could throw in. And I know fan service doesn't make the movie, but I'm just saying there's a lot of things here that you could, that I would like to personally see in live action on the big screen as a fan of Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. So I think it's a good idea if they give it the right director and all that stuff. I think they can make a solid hour and a half movie, especially considering what like The Last of Us adaptation is doing, where they're like taking direct shots. There's like direct things that you could take, like I said, those moments where you're holding out against hordes and stuff. Maybe you could have the roof on the Mercy Hospital, the airport, the mall is from the second game. But my point is, there's a lot of fucking different set pieces you could literally just lift wholesale from the game for action scenes, and I think it would work really well, and I think it would make the fans happy. So, number 10 is gonna be Left 4 Dead. Number 9, we have Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, this is the only game on this list that I actually have not played through. I have been meaning to play through it. I had a memory timing issue on my PC for years that I didn't realize that was the problem that prevented me from playing it. I've played, I think, like 5 or 6 hours of it before I got to a mission that I literally couldn't pass because my game kept crashing before I could beat it, and there's no checkpoints in that game. So, what I did play, I did enjoy. I do plan on going back. I actually plan on making it like a series where I go and play this game for the first time, because it is so widely regarded and so highly regarded as like one of the best, at least stories, at least that I've seen in games. So I definitely do want to go back and play it, and I did enjoy what I managed to play of it, and I did fix that memory timing issue, so I can go back and play it now. So regardless, we're getting off topic. I think that this would be a good movie, not only because the story is supposedly so good and there's good characters and all that stuff. There's not a lot of Western movies that come out nowadays. At least not a lot of, high budget ones. And I think if the characters and story in this are as good as people say that they are, this would be a good one. The game is long enough to constitute a story. I'm sure there's some set pieces in that campaign. There was a train robbery that was like the biggest one when I played. But I think there's a lot of stuff you can do. There's a lot of dramatic moments. I mean, Rockstar has always been at least decent with their storylines in the games that I've played. So I can't imagine the story is that much of a letdown. But people say that it is really good. Again, I haven't played it, but I think it would, not only if you have the characters and you adapt it somewhat faithfully, you also have a decent storyline, and you have a Western movie, which we don't get a lot of. That would appeal to people who aren't fans of the game, and they'd see it too. So I think it's a good idea. I think they should make it. I think it would be the first Rockstar adaptation, but I think between GTA and Red Dead, I think Red Dead is probably the better adaptation, because GTA is a lot more generic, I think. But, I mean, I guess you could do it. I don't know. I would be personally more excited for Red Dead just because we don't get a lot of Westerns. That's just me. Whatever. But Red Dead Redemption 2... and that's the prequel. That's why I said the second game instead of the first one, because apparently the second game's a prequel. You probably want to start out with the prequel. Yeah, so that's it. Number 9, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 8, Far Cry. Now, specifically Far Cry 3, because I think that would probably make the best story for a movie. Now, Far Cry 3 is probably one of my favorite games of all time. In terms of first-person shooters, it's definitely one of my favorite FPSs. I think it's really goddamn good. And I think that Far Cry 3... specifically would make a good movie with the whole psychological aspect of like the main character starting out as like this pompous rich kid who like doesn't know anything about survival or how to survive, and is the definition of privileged and all this stuff slowly over the course of this movie. And then you have this aspect of him learning to survive and learning to kill so he can like save his friends and do what he has to do. And then over the course of the movie, you see him like gradually enjoying doing this stuff, just like in the game. I think there's a really good dynamic there. And I think it's a dynamic that's not really done a lot in really any media, at least not as well as Far Cry. Specifically, Far Cry 3 has done it. Far Cry 3 did a really good job of making you believe this guy who you play as, who like starts out barely even understanding how to fire a gun, and over the course of the game, as he's doing all this fucked up shit, he's living through the terrors and the horrors that this island presents to them. They morph into this stone cold killer, and eventually they become just as crazy as the island that they find themselves on. That's a really good narrative piece, and I think that you could translate that really well into a movie. You could have a lot of psychological aspects, like Far Cry 3. It'd have to be really subtle. I don't know. I just really like Far Cry 3 and the way it does its storyline. I know there's other villains and stuff, and the other games have good storylines, but in my opinion, I think it peaked with Far Cry 3. In terms of narrative, which is really what matters when you're adapting it for movie or TV, I think that it probably has the most to chew on because of that psychological aspect and the transition that the main character goes through. So I definitely think it would make a good movie. I would make sure to get a really good action director or someone who directs action really good, because you'd have to nail the action in this. I think Far Cry 3 has enough characters, has enough of that transition, and it's deep enough plot and character wise to sustain an hour-and-a-half movie. So I do think it would make a good adaptation, and it would, in terms of the Far Cry games, it'd probably be the best one to adapt, and it's probably the most liked one, at least from what I've seen online, which for good reason, it's my favorite as well. So that would be number 8, Far Cry 3. Number 7, we have BioShock. Now, BioShock would make a really cool movie simply for the fact that it'd be cool to see this underwater world, Rapture, on live action, on either on the big screen or maybe it's an Amazon, Netflix adaptation. Hopefully not Netflix, Jesus Christ.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
I think it'd be really cool, including to people who aren't fans of the games even. I think just the underwater world of Rapture is really fun to explore. Admission, I've never actually beat this game either. Yeah, I've never beat this game either, but I've seen footage. I know the twist. I do think that the twist doesn't work nearly as well in movie form. I will admit that. The entire twist of BioShock, the ending, is kind of predicated on it being a video game, so I don't know how well you can make that work, but this is number 7 on the list simply for being able to see that underwater world in live action. It'd probably be a lot of CG and stuff, but I still think it'd be cool, and I'd still want to see it, and the plasmids, and all that stuff. It might, on hindsight, it might have been probably gone a bit higher on the list, but I think the visuals and stuff and the style that this game has would definitely make it a unique thing. And I am a really big fan of unique movies, just because I've seen a lot of fucking movies and I've played a lot of games and stuff, so like I like stuff that's unique, and BioShock is definitely unique. Items on this list above it are kind of just generic, somewhat real world stuff. You got a western, a zombie apocalypse, and a tropical island. BioShock is definitely its own breed of fantastical, and it definitely walks the line of being realistic or not, but I like it. I think it'd be cool as a movie, so you get to see the big daddies and little sisters and all that stuff in live action would be cool imagery. I think it'd be cool. So that's number 7, BioShock. Number 6, and this ties in with a game that just released, actually, that I'm going to be playing on stream here soon. Dead Space. I think Dead Space would make a really good live-action psychological horror film. You take some liberties. I think there's 2 ways you could take it. You could either have like a group of people landing on like some derelict ship, like the Ishimura, or maybe a derelict planet or something, where this marker is, and you could have it where they're discovering what it is and they're fighting it back, and it's structured much more like a typical horror film where you have this group of people being taken out one by one by necromorphs or the marker or whatever, until you get to the one who's the final girl, quote unquote, which I mean, I'd imagine it'd be Isaac, but it could be someone else. For it to be Isaac if it's going to be loyal, but whatever. But if you go this route, I would be fine with it not being, but you could make it work that way, or you could do it completely faithful, where you make it Isaac, he gets to this ship, he starts out kind of not knowing what the fuck's going on, like the viewer would be, unless you're fans of the games, then you get it. He lands on this ship, he's trying to figure out what's going on, he sees these fucking things, and over the course of the movie, because I think it would work better as a movie, I don't know if there's enough guts here to satisfy a TV show. Over the course of the movie, he gets more and more competent, just like you would over the course of the game, with dispatching these things and taking them out. And then by the end, he's kind of like this like 80s action hero-esque type character, where he's just taking them out left and right, and it ends in this climax where he takes out the giant fucking hive mind and stuff at the center. That could work too. Either way, I think it'd be really cool to see the necromorphs in live action. You could do some really cool psychological horror stuff with the marker, which we don't see a lot of that in horror movies either. We see some. I think it's making a resurgence. You had movies like Smile and stuff that was a complete psychological fuckfest. I haven't seen. I still have to watch it, but I do think it would make a good psychological horror movie, or a horror movie turned into like an 80s action movie, kind of like maybe Aliens or something. I don't know. You could do either or, but I think that it would make a good adaptation. I would be excited for it. I'm a big Dead Space fan. I've always been a big Dead Space guy. It's probably my favorite. In terms of like the horror, for the AAA horror franchises, it's probably my favorite. So yeah, I would definitely be excited for it. I think it'd be cool. You get some badass to play Isaac Clarke. I think it would work really well. So number 6, adaptation, Dead Space. Alright, number 5. We got Halo. Now, look, I know there's a Halo adaptation, but we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist, because that fucking thing sucks. Alright, it has nothing to do with Halo other than maybe some weapon designs, some character names, just some general design stuff. So we're just going to fucking ignore that fucking piece of shit exists. Because you know what? Halo could make I've been playing through Halo 2. For a video I'm doing for this channel as a follow-up to the last one I did on Halo, and there's some fucking good opportunity for some story here, like some really good intrigue and things, in world building, and things that would fit either a movie or a TV series. I don't understand why the fucking new piece of shit Paramount fucking series deviated so wildly from the source material when there's plenty of source material to work with. It's not like Doom, where there's not really a lot of depth to the characters, there's not really a lot of depth to what's going on. There's a lot of depth to what's going on, and there's a lot of stuff you can do just with the lore that the games give you, so I don't understand why they went off in this fucking wild, different direction with this. Whatever, we're gonna pretend that that fucking stupid set piece of shit doesn't exist. Literally, all they have to do, if they take Reach, I haven't played Reach yet, I'm playing it through the games in order of release. I'm gonna get to it. I've heard it's really good. But if they started with Reach, which is widely regarded as like one of the best stories in Halo, they have characters there. They already have an overall plot line. You know, they have character arcs and all this stuff built in. All they have to do is adapt that shit. I don't understand why they didn't do that, but that's all they have to. If they do that, that would make and then they use that, they springboard on it, and they can even make a show out of it. Make a show out of it. Make the first season be Reach, where you're getting, you know, Chief off the planet. I know I haven't played it. I do know that that's like the goal of the game. And then you could have the second season start at Halo 1. You might have to add a few things, you know, maybe add some scenes with Keys and stuff, and his people discovering what the Flood are, and you can even have bits with Arbiter where you show him commanding his forces against his Spartan who landed on his planet and he's trying to fucking fight him off. You could do a bunch of stuff even with the first Halo game. Like especially because it gets expanded on in Halo 2. There's so much you could use in this series, and I don't understand why they didn't use any of it. There's like it goes with that mindset that I was saying earlier, where it's like, fuck that, fuck the video games, that's kid shit. Who cares what they have to say? They're dumb kid shit, video game garbage. We're gonna do our own thing. Yeah, and you did your own thing, and it fucking sucks, and no one likes it. Alright? I hope you feel proud of yourselves.
That is one big pile of shit.
Fucking pisses me off, but whatever. You make a new Halo series, you completely deviate. That's the quote-unquote silver timeline, right? Because you can't fucking have something that's canon, because fuck the video games and fuck the canon of the video games. Fuck these people that made this TV show. You make it in canon, you just adapt it, you know, Last of Us HBO style. Not even that. Like I said, you can put some things in, you can put some stuff in. Halo Reach, you almost don't have to adapt anything, because that's already a full-blown story with characters and all that stuff. Halo 1, there's a little bit less, but you could fill it out. You know, you add scenes with Arbiter commanding his troops, trying to figure out who this guy is that landed on his planet. Him and his troops figuring out what the Flood are. You could have Captain Keyes doing the same thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff you could do to fill out that game and the series in general. And there's still a lot of potential here. I don't care that non-existent series that I'm wiping from my mind exists. It doesn't exist to me. And Halo would still make a goddamn good series, regardless of whatever the fuck they decide to do. It's on this list, number 5. And on top of that, we need more sci-fi series anyway. Yeah, number 5 is Halo. Number 4, we have Destiny. Funny, it's following just after Halo, but Bungie's previous game. Look, here's the thing, and I think that this is why this is number 4 on the list, because of the way that fucking Destiny has done its content, where it's vaulted a bunch of shit, and there's a bunch of shit that you can't even access anymore campaign-wise, and all this other garbage. Why don't you just put it in a movie? Put all that stuff you vaulted into a movie, the death of Cade9, and the death of that one Oathkeeper, whatever the fuck. I play Destiny off and on. I just started playing the newest expansion recently, because I know they're coming out with another expansion. I do think the gunplay's fun, but we're getting off track here. We're talking about an adaptation. There's a lot of stuff that was vaulted that I don't know about. I have a hard time following a lot of the campaign stuff because I've never played this goddamn shit, because I didn't play it at launch and it got vaulted and now I can't play it. Why don't you just put it in a movie? You put all this stuff in it, you got characters, and you got years of characters and lore built up now. There's plenty of stuff you could dig into. You could even make a TV series out of it, probably. I mean, there's a lot of lore and characters and stuff. You got 4 expansions worth of campaign. I mean, it's something. It would be a unique setting. It would have unique atmosphere. There's not really any other settings or atmosphere that are like Destiny that I've seen. And, you could have, some fan service things, but I think there's enough lore and story here to justify either a movie or even a TV series, I think would work. Especially considering a lot of the stuff, the early stuff, was vaulted. And in the season stuff, too. The seasonal stuff where you have to, buy to get access to the season, and then you can play the missions on there, and then you get cutscenes. That stuff gets vaulted too. You could use a lot of that fucking shit for the movie, because a lot of that stuff, or the series, because a lot of that stuff, a lot of people haven't seen yet. So there's a lot of potential here. It's another sci-fi series, which I think we are lacking. We aren't getting a lot of sci-fi series, at least a lot of good ones, in terms of movie and TV lately. So I think it would work really well, and I would definitely like to see it. As someone who plays it occasionally, because I do like the gunplay, I like the weapons, I like aspects of Destiny. So I think it'd be a good idea. So that's number 4. So number 3, we got Deus Ex. Now I think that this would make a fantastic adaptation, and the reason why I know this is because they kind of already did it. If you've seen the Blade Runner movies, in terms of atmosphere and aesthetic, and even some of the themes, have a lot in common with Deus Ex in terms of robotics and what constitutes being human, what constitutes not being human, all that stuff. It's not exactly the same, but I think that could be used as a proof of concept that this kind of world could work. Because in terms of the atmosphere and the way it looks, it's very similar to Deus Ex, and like I said, some of the themes. The reason why this series is as high on this list as it is because there's not a lot of conspiracy thrillers, and conspiracy thrillers is one of my favorite genres, simply because there's not a lot of them, and I really enjoy them. You could have this Blade Runner-esque, you could have this world where you have these augmented people, and you have these protests, and you have these big corporations / government groups that are controlling things discreetly, and you have a person that's discovering these things through this world. I think that would work really well in a movie or a TV series, but I think it would work better in a movie. But you probably could turn it into a TV series where you slowly uncover the threads, either Illuminati or whatever conspiracy organization they want to use for this. I think it would work really well, simply because we don't have a lot of well-written conspiracy thrillers out there. On top of this being its own sci-fi world and stuff, which would already set it apart, I think Deus Ex would make a fantastic movie, or even a series, dude, because you could have a series where you don't discover who's really behind shit until the last 2 or 3 episodes, and then you go after them. And it's this whole thing. I think there's a lot of potential here. You don't even have to follow the main characters from the games, I don't think. I mean, you could make direct adaptations of the first Deus Ex game, or Deus Ex Human Revolution, if you want to go the prequel route. And I think you could probably make it work. It could probably work out really well. But I think the thing with this, and why it's so high up on this list too, is you don't have to. The world of Deus Ex with this conspiracy stuff, kind of conspiracy sci-fi world, works well enough that you can base things off of it without it being directly tied to what's happening in the games. So, and it's definitely a cult classic. There's a lot of Deus Ex fans that'd probably be happy to see this. I will admit, there's probably not much it could do that we haven't seen in movies before. That unlike a lot of the other properties on this list that would have like for Left 4 Dead, there'd be Special Infected, or Dead Space, there'd be Necromorphs or whatever. There's not a lot that would be exclusive or specific to the series Deus Ex. I mean, you just kind of have augmented people, which is just kind of generic sci-fi stuff. I think adding that conspiracy theory flair to it would help differentiate it from other sci-fi movies. Number 3 is Deus Ex. I think it would be a great adaptation. Number 2, we have Fallout. Now, I know Amazon's making a Fallout series. It hasn't come out. I haven't heard much about it. I do know it's in production. They're doing it. I don't know how it's going to turn out. We don't know if it's going to be closer to the HBO style of adaptation or the Netflix style of adaptation, which is actually pretty damn good, or complete dog shit. It is happening, and I do think that it would serve an adaptation well. And you could either do it movie or TV. Again, it's similar to Deus Ex, where you don't have to follow the main characters. You could have it follow its own style of characters in this Fallout world, because the Fallout world is very, or at least it's somewhat extensive. There's a lot to it. You know, you got ghouls, Deathclaws, the Radiation, Super Mutants. You got different factions, Enclave and NCR, Legion, all that stuff. There's definitely enough deep lore here to satisfy at least a movie. You probably could make a TV show out of it, which again, Amazon is apparently doing. I have my fingers crossed, because I'll be honest, Fallout is probably one of my favorite game series of all time. I love Fallout. Fallout 3 in particular is in my top 5 games of all. I absolutely adore Fallout 3. I know that's an unpopular opinion. Here's a hotter take. I like it more than New Vegas.
You what?
Yeah, crucify me in the comments. I do like New Vegas. New Vegas is probably my top 10 games of all time. But Fallout 3 was, personally, it was the first like open world RPG Bethesda game that I played. Always have a close spot to my heart for that. And I still, like, even replaying it today, I still think that Fallout 3 has a better world.
Did he just say, aye? He did.
Regardless, we're getting off topic. This isn't a Fallout 3 versus New Vegas video. This is an adaptation video. I think this universe has enough. You can even do a pre-war thing. You could even, if you made this into a series, you could have like the first episode be entirely pre-war, where it's just the build-up to the Great War. There's a lot of intrigue just even in that, with the oil wars, the annexation of Canada, a lot of the stuff that was going on at the time that we've gotten a glimpse at through the games. You could actually show it in live action. You could show like the European oil wars. You could show Operation Anchorage, which we did see in Fallout 3, but you could show it in live action, and it does have a lot of that fan service stuff. You could show Enclave power armor. You could show, you know, ghouls and super mutants and stuff that's exclusive to Fallout that the fans would get a kick out of. I know I would. It would make a fantastic adaptation. I hope that they do it justice with Amazon. I have my doubts, honestly. I do hope that they do it well. Fallout is one of my favorite franchises, and I really do hope they do it justice. And I do think it deserves a good adaptation. So, Fallout number 2. Number 1, Mass Effect. Now, look, I get that this is a personal thing. Mass Effect, the series, is very, very near and dear to my heart. The second game, Mass Effect 2, depending on what day you ask me, because my top 5 games of all time kind of shift always. They kind of always move around. Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and depending on the day you ask me, it might be my favorite game of all time. I love the characters in this. I still don't think that there's a game that has done characters as likable and as good as Mass Effect 2 has done them. And Mass Effect 1 is in my top 10 games of all time. The universe it sets up, the characters in that are pretty good too. They're a massive step up in 2, but they're still pretty goddamn good. I love this series. Mass Effect 3 broke my heart. Andromeda broke my heart even more. Everyone has their sci-fi franchise, right? You know, that they latch onto and they really enjoy, and they watch everything that comes out, and they obsess over this stuff. You know, some people it's Star Wars, some people it's Star Trek. For me, it has always been Mass Effect, because Mass Effect has always been, even back when I played it when I was a lot younger, one of my favorite games of all time. 2 of my favorite games of all time, actually. And it's always held a special place in my heart because of that. This universe that this series has, again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but you don't have to focus on the main storyline. Now, you could. I think you probably should, because I think the main storyline is still so goddamn good. But this universe is good enough, it's deep enough to where you could focus on it. You could make a prequel to where it's like a prequel to the Krogan Rebellion, where you have the Krogan, you know, fighting back, and you have the genophage being developed. You could have the Rachni Wars. You know, you could make a series set during that. You could make, you know, the people fighting the Rachni and the Krogan, you know, being uplifted and all this stuff. There's so much intrigue. You can make an entire season of TV based on like the Quarian Geth Rebellion type situation. Like, there's so much here that you could do and you could experiment with. This is a really deep universe. It probably isn't as deep as Star Wars or Star Trek. I mean, it hasn't had as much shows, media, adaptations, whatever. But I think there's way plenty here to make a series out of. And it'd have to be a series. I don't think a movie based on this would work at all. Even if you were to just adapt the first game, there's so much there that you'd have to simplify a lot of stuff, and I feel like you'd have to cut out a lot of the character stuff, which is what makes these games so goddamn good. And you'd have to cut out a lot of the world building stuff. A lot of the entertainment, at least for me, that came from the Mass Effect games is reading the codexes, reading the history of this world and how it got to be this way. And you could use a series to explore this. And then, you know, if you don't want to do that, you could also adapt the main trilogy. I mean, the main trilogy up until the third game, where it has moments of goodness that was built on the previous games, but is definitely a major step down from the previous two at the very least. You could still have a compelling story there, even though there's not, you know, the dialogue choices and all that stuff that you can't really portray in an adaptation. I still think there's a lot here that people can latch onto, and I think you can make this into something that's really, really special. Anyway, that's my list. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Let me know if you disagree with this list, if you think I'm full of shit, you know, what your list would be. I'm probably this is probably a curse, you know, I'm asking for these adaptations. We'll probably get some of them and they'll probably be dog shit like the Halo one that we got. Look, this is a wish list for good adaptations, alright? This isn't a fucking wish list for whatever the fuck Halo, Resident Evil, and all this other fucking garbage is. This is a fucking wish list for good adaptations, so we're just gonna fucking leave that goddamn shit out of the conversation. You know, let me know what your list would be. Do you want to see adapted? What do you think would make good adaptations? I would love to see your list. Make sure if you like this video, do the fucking standard YouTube shit. You fucking subscribe and do the like and all that other garbage. This has been Faded Zephyr signing out. Thanks for watching.